gives me great pleasure to introduce a fantastic panel on Unicorn Diaries, how to make $1 billion, and insights on the internet economy. And you have 4 stellar panelists who represent the best of our unicorn effort. Rahul Garg, founder and CEO of Moglix. Sandeep Agarwal, founder of Droom. Abhiraj Bhal, founder and CEO of The Urban Company. And Mayank Kumar, co-founder and MD of Upgrad. And before I try and get this quick, snappy session underway, I just want to give you one data point. The month of September alone has seen startups in India raise close to $3.5 billion. That's just this one month. And of that, 41 were growth stage investments, 114 were early stage, and at least 40 are undisclosed. So this number could be much higher. And this is what is already being called the year of the unicorn in India. My question, and I throw this to the extreme right, Mayank, for you to tell our audience, is this just a year or will it be a decade of unicorns from India?
I mean, I think it's a decade of unicorns for India. And I guess the 30, 35 unicorns that have been formed this year, I think it's just about scratching the surface as we speak right now. Because, I mean, when we look at those businesses, these are real businesses that are coming out. And these are businesses that are actually disrupting the existing offline with the online ecosystem. These are tech-enabled, come with a very different margin profiles. These are businesses that has potential to reach to scale, which in physical formats are difficult for multiple other companies to do so. So I do believe with the quality of founders, with the capital coming in, with the market opening up, digital infrastructure getting ready, it's not just a year, but it's a decade of long run growth for us.
Long growth, and that's fantastic news. I want to come to you, Abhiraj, and you run what I would call a services company. And the question about valuations, again, for a large audience which is watching this across the massive reach of the India Today group, tell us, how do you get to unicorn status in the simplest way as you can?
I think you have to really focus on building a company that creates value for customers, for suppliers. I'd say unicorn or no unicorn, that's an outcome. You can't have that as your goal. Valuation is really an outcome metric. So the focus has to be on building a high quality company which creates a lot of value for society, and the valuation will follow.
All right. Valuations again, Sandeep, the question, and I want to take you to China because that's another dominant theme. I've asked you this before. I repeat the question for the benefit of our audience. China, ByteDance as a company, if you look at valuations, from 60 million to $75 billion. India is also generating unicorns, but the numbers here are 500 million up to, let's say, 5 billion, 4 billion, that range. Why is this? Why is there a gap? Is it because culturally, language-wise, China is one market, and a fact that many of our audience may not fully appreciate, India is not one market. You're actually dealing with perhaps 24 markets, languages, cultures, and people in some way.
Well, that could be a reason, but I think the reason why ByteDance or TikTok, as famously known, has created a high value, or for that matter, Alibaba and so many Baidu and so many other companies, is because internet has been around for 27 years. It's designed as open by nature, not just as a technology architecture in terms of the business ecosystem also, but that was not the case in China. There was a lot of protectionism was given, like in late 90s, you had 3 e-commerce companies, all were same size. One was owned by eBay, one was by Amazon, one was a local company, Alibaba, and 3-5 years later, there was only one company. So, I think that there are only, if you look at beyond US, there are only 2 countries which can give you more than 500 million, or I would say even close to 1 billion internet population, that is India and China. The only difference is China had 25 years of protectionism for the internet companies. That was not the case in India. But it's catching up. Like, India is still now, if you see the glass half full, then I would say India is still the home to the 3rd largest unicorns, and half of them have come in last 2 years alone.
Absolutely, and this dollar deluge, Rahul, that's the point. again, where is this money coming from? I know people within the startup world, the VC world, know this. Private equity guys, of course, know it. But where is all of this money coming from, and can it sustain? Maybe, if not too long a horizon, at least for the next 2 to 3 years.
So firstly, I think I want to challenge this entire notion that there's a lot of money coming to India. Because if you look at it, what may seem like $1 billion, $2 billion, and you look at the global economy of $50+ trillion, I think for many of the countries, this money is still peanuts. I think just because our economy size is fairly low,
You're also hinting at the currency conversion, right?
I am also hinting at the currency conversion, but I am also saying that what we think of a 100 CR company or a 1000 CR company starts to become large. You think of going to a US market and a stock exchange, it will probably be small cap or may not be even big enough to get listed.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, Mayank. I want to take this point with you and relate it to the fact that what Rahul calls peanuts in terms of inflows, should I say that some startups, not all, are being timid by not having global ambitions? IT engineers, Indian engineers run some of the best companies across the world. I don't even have to take those names. Yet these startups, which have a global model in terms of their basic business, why aren't you going out? The same question, China created a TikTok, why aren't we there still?
I think India is still a very, very large market. And as I said earlier, that we are just starting to scratch the surface. And even if you look at when we sort of talk to investors and the external community, the entire focus back to us is that, look, why don't you double down on India? Because in India, you can build a very large-scale business. And as Sandeep mentioned, there are billion-plus internet users.
Large scale but low margin?
I would not even call it low margin. If you provide value, there is margin to be made. And I guess that's what everyone is focusing on, that how can you provide more and more value to the customers?
Sandeep, define value, because your business is all about delivering value, even if it's in used cars, for example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think internet is not necessarily, I'm not underestimating everything new age companies do, but a lot of that is really reinvention of how things were done without these technologies which are now available to mankind. So we are not, at Droom, we are not reinventing the car, which other people are doing it very beautifully, but we are reinventing how the automobile should be bought and sold. And then, the definition of innovation is what is possible now, which was not previously possible, right? So internet has made products and services basically geography agnostic. You don't need to, right? They have made them time agnostic. They have lowered the entry barrier. And then, one by one, we have seen, today, travel is 80% plus online.
Yep.
Right? But 25 years back, if I tell someone that I will never have to go somewhere to book my travel, he would laugh at me.
And
right?
Sandeep, you remind me, almost a decade and a half ago, one of the earliest internet travel companies was again an Indian company. I will also try and get all four of them to speak about their startup stories. But before I do, I want to take one major question, which is like the elephant in the room in some ways. Rajiv Jain's comment, Bajaj Finance executive, he was quoted across media recently saying, and I'm going to try and read this off to you so that you can appreciate the full comment. In the context of fintechs, and there are so many of them in India, he said, show me $1 billion balance sheet fintech, there are none. There may be $1 billion valuation fintechs, but not $1 billion balance sheet. He's trying to make the point about startup valuations and their strategic levels. Who wants to answer this question? I'll quickly go across the panel. You want to take that first?
Sure, I'll take that. I think, we discussed this and debated on this point, but I guess that's also a point that the evolution of fintechs are much at a low, they are at a very nascent stage, and the incumbents have been there for some time, have built the balance sheet over a period of time. And the business model and the financial models at which the startups and the new age economy companies are operating are fundamentally different than, let's say, the traditional and incumbents who are operating out there right now. So I think it's not a question. I think today, factually, he's right. But you have to also take the lens of time and how long have the incumbents been existent versus the fintech. And maybe 5 years later, the same question can be raised in a very different setup, a different setting.
Abhiraj, I am taking that same question with a small addition. What you're doing is actually a very difficult business. You try to aggregate and get services of a certain kind, which most of you here would agree with me, are difficult. And not only is the first service a difficult one, follow-ups, if it doesn't get fixed properly, how do you go and chase that guy? Practically sometimes just bought off the street. Abhiraj, from that point of view and the valuation matrix, explain it to our audience, those naysayers or doubters who say, well, these valuations are not worth the paper they are written on.
You know, I'll be quick. So I think I think the valuations are ahead of where the companies are today, to be honest. But a lot of this bet is on India and how India will pan out over the next 10 years. The hope is that India will become at least a 5 trillion and hopefully a $7-8 trillion economy. And that means you're creating $2 to $3 trillion of new economy. And that's a rebalancing of a lot of sectors that will happen. I think a lot of tech companies can also not just hand wave and say, look, because we're tech, because we have better margins, that's why we, these valuations are called to us. We have to go in our respective sectors and do the heavy lifting. So as urban company, we run over 100 training centers. We help service professionals with training, with onboarding support, with financing solutions. So you really have to go deep in the sectors that you're trying to organize. Because if you want a lion's share of that...
Does your service technician who's on contract, sorry for the interruption, get paid better, the same, or worse off? I'm asking this question also in the context of the controversy we saw around the pay for drivers in a certain company, online cab aggregator.
Look, we take great pride in the fact that our service professionals earn significantly higher than what the offline average is. There has been some recent controversy around this, and for those of you in the audience who might not be aware, there was some recent strikes from urban company professionals saying that we want better earnings. An important point I want to make here is that all of us as companies are young and we're evolving. We're willing to learn. We have the humility to say that we're not perfect. And our models will evolve. And I think all of us have to be given that opportunity to make mistakes and evolve these models so that eventually we become large companies which create win-win for society.
That's a fair point because, a lot of people would say the founders, the top management are becoming crorepati's, millionaires, billionaires. What about those who are actually enabling this? I want to turn away from business in the last 5-6 minutes that we have left on this session, and I want to get all four on the panel to relate their startup story. How did they arrive at it? A couple of them have founded, successfully exited, restarted across. Maybe Rahul, I'll start off with you. Tell all those who are watching about how you actually came to be a startup icon.
So I think firstly, we are still in the journey. I think there's a long way to go. But we are into manufacturing and infrastructure sector. And I think what COVID has taught is that India really needs to continue to play a very, very important role in global supply chain. I think in our journey, I started with a mission. Actually, we are referring one of the Chinese name, but we started with a mission, we'll build Alibaba 2.0. We said, what has happened in a consumer commerce, and we use many of the consumer commerce platform, food delivery platforms, we want to bring that to businesses. And I think we have been at it problem for last 5 years since launch. And we have realized that every single inflection point, whether it was GST, demonetization, COVID, I think every single of those have enabled more and more India to realize that there is a certain element of what is the customer experience or a business experience they are able to get offline, and they can get much, much better experience when you start to transition to online behavior. And I think we are continuing our journey on that problem solving. Valuation is just one of those milestones which makes you feel good as well as get more access to resources.
Absolutely. Sandeep, the same question, one story from your past of how you chose to become a startup icon.
Well, my story is quite different. I was in Silicon Valley for 15 years. I had no plan to be back here. When I came here, my parents were very happy. They thought that we are getting old and son is coming back. But I actually came back because I saw in 2011 an opportunity to start my first venture, which was ShopClues. And it was the first marketplace at the time when India e-commerce was showing sign that it has arrived. But everyone was inventory-led model, and it was like 17-year-old industry, but for all practical purposes, zero for India. So I was a Wall Street analyst. I saw this as an opportunity that maybe how many times you see an opportunity to create Amazon or Alibaba of India before you die. And so I just jumped on that, came with a one-way ticket first time in 15 years to India. and build it from 35th entrant into Indian e-commerce to the 4th unicorn. Now we are talking about 70, 80. So I have seen this ecosystem growing. But it was not that simple for me. The month I first time believed that I have arrived as an entrepreneur and it's a matter of time my company will become $1 billion and go public, the next 2 years, multiple things happened in my life. I was arrested by FBI in USA. I had to step down from Shopcluse. I had to see my 20 years old marriage failing. And I had to start at the age of 41 like a 19-year-old boy. But I'm very glad where I am right now. And, as Rahul said, I share the sentiments. I think the way, Industrial Revolution did produce a lot of new things, but it changed how people did things. Same way, I think digital economy is just changing how we do things, and I feel very lucky to be part of
If I
changing.
can say on a lighter vein, because your story is quite touching, a duck paddling furiously in the water. Abhiraj and then Mayank, quickly, the same question to you. Abhiraj, starting with you.
Look, I think, nothing as dramatic as Sandeep's, but our first startup failed. It was a great lesson. We realized that all the degrees and all the work
Does it still
experience
hurt?
I'm sorry?
Does the failure hurt?
It did, very interestingly, I remember waking up the next day feeling quite liberated because, the writing was always on the wall. You were dragging on for a little bit longer. You woke up when we decided, and Varun, my co-founder now, we, met over a few drinks and we decided, this is not working, let's just shut it down. The next day I woke up saying, okay, now the canvas is clean, so I can reimagine things again. And I think I'm seeing that kind of energy in a lot of the youngsters who are going out there today. They're actually dreaming bigger, they're thinking bolder. So I'm very bullish on the next 10 years for India.
Generally speaking, quick 30 seconds, are Indians good at taking to failure? I'm talking about the young generation, the startup generation versus maybe other global communities that you might have seen.
I think we are. I think this generation is willing to take failure head on, is not afraid of failing. In fact, they want to fail fast, iterate fast, and learn from their mistakes and keep improving.
Mayank, many of us were brought up with certain values. One of them was, degree nahi hogi to kya karoge, nokri nahi hogi, salary nahi hogi to ghar kaise basaoge. And yet I see young people that I sometimes interview for jobs, and I realize that they have an attitude which is very different from us. The final question and final response on the panel.
No, so my story was very personal. I think it was a visit to why the idea came into place. It was a visit from me to an engineering college in Greater Noida. And there's a running joke that if you throw a stone, you will hit an engineering school in Greater Noida. So I visited there, 4th floor, the building were empty. There were 4 children studying. All had come from either Jharkhand, Bihar, MP, and that region. And the parents were spending money for their education. They said, look, sir, mujhe pata nahi yahan kya hota hai. Sometimes teachers come, sometimes they don't come, but I have to sit for an examination. I laughed at that point in time. And then the penny dropped on me that, look, I'm a product of a highly subsidized education. I studied in Kendriya Vidyalaya. I went to IIT. My government paid for my entire education. And if I'm not doing something about it, I do not have the option of lamenting and saying that, look, this is not working out. I cannot be complaining. And that was the move from being complaining to doing something was the reason why Upgrad came into existence.
Wonderful, and very clearly, all of these well-deserved applause. And as I wind down this session, I would just want to wish all of you spectacular success. Wish all those budding entrepreneurs who are out there trying to make a go at it, aspire for a unicorn, and possibly and hopefully a decacorn as well. With that, it's a wrap. Thank you very much to the entire panel. Preeti, over to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Can we please raise a warm applause as I call upon Sahil Malik, Managing Director, Don Milano, to come up on stage and present a small token of our appreciation to these gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Garg, Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Behel, Mr. Kumar. Thank you, Siddharth.